Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my September wrap-up. The first book I read was The Sinking of the RMS Taylor by Jill Hoffs. I have already recorded a review of this on my phone, and once I figured out how to upload it to my computer, this book is subtitled The Lost Story of the Victorian Titanic. The RMS Taylor was a ship that sailed 60 years before the Titanic, but was produced by the White Star Line, although I believe at this time they were a different entity than the people who created the Titanic. This book details a tragedy. The RMS Taylor was a ship that was meant to be taking a lot of people towards new lives in Australia, and there were a lot of things that went wrong, and thus this book ends up talking about shipwrecks. Jill has already kindly sent me her next book, which details another shipwreck, and I will be reviewing that at some point as well. Well, probably once I've read it, I will read and review that book as soon as possible. This book is a work of non-fiction, but Jill Hoffs writes with a poet's ear, and is a tragedy that I feel a lot more people should know about, because Jill doesn't tell this from a judgmental point of view. She lets you know all of the facts for you to make your own opinions about what happened, and I think that it is a very brilliant, thought-out piece of non-fiction. The next book I read was Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn. I considered participating in the Diversathon, however I didn't have the time. I was doing overtime most days at work that week and couldn't really read much once I'd got everything done that I wanted to get done at home. Here Comes the Sun follows 4 main female protagonists to give an accurate portrayal of Jamaica in 1994. I watched an interview with the author from Politics and Prose that I will link down below. It is a brilliant interview that will give you much more insight into the author and into the novel. This book follows 4 women: Margot, Tandy, Dolores and Verdine, as they navigate their lives throughout Jamaica, which has a very strict class system, and the author does talk about that more in the interview. I'd say that all of the female characters have equal parts within this novel, but Margot did definitely feel more like a protagonist. She was the character we were focused on throughout the book. She works at a hotel where she prostitutes herself to fund her sister's education. Her mother sells trinkets 3 times their price at market for the same reason, but Tandy is feeling the stresses of being a young Jamaican woman, and Verdine is connected to Margot in a way I don't want to mention because I'm not sure whether it is a spoiler, but Verdine is a outcast from Jamaica due to events that happened years prior to the novel. This book could be a difficult book to read. It was great to read from a perspective that I didn't know about a country that I didn't know about. There is this other main plot of the novel that a lot of the villages have been uprooted to make way for more tourist destinations. They are being ploughed down and turned into hotels and spas and big complexes that will allow more upper class white tourists to come to Jamaica and to not really see the real Jamaica. They are forcing these people out of their homes. They are buying up properties that are mostly rented and kicking the people out onto the streets without any thought as to what they will do and what will happen to them. There is talk of rape culture and homophobia, and there is this for some of the characters there is a religious, I couldn't call it an undertone, it's very much who they are, sometimes for misguided reasons. And there is talk of skin bleaching, which just seems like such a horrific practice, which is something that is the norm but is also chastised and ridiculed and looked down upon. so that these characters, there is no way they can win. There is no way that they can escape the confines of their social class. I said that I wanted to read books about class systems this year, and that was definitely prominent in here. Margot ends up seeing a goal for herself, and the characters definitely go on journeys that are correct for their characters, but not necessarily the stories, journeys that you would expect within fiction. I can understand the decisions that Nicole Dennis Ben made as a writer, and to me this is a splendid piece of prose that I did enjoy reading. It was exceptionally hard hitting. I believe that it should be a book that is read. It stands up for me with a lot of the great African literature that I've read before, and I also liked that it was written in dialect and patois. I believe that's how you say it. And if you don't say it like that, please correct me, because I am learning myself. I'd say to go and read this book. Well, just if you want to read a good piece of literature that deals with some very hard-hitting issues, then this is going to be a book for you. Next, I read Miss Marvel Volume 5 Super Famous by G. Willow Wilson, Takeshi Miyazawa, Adrian Alfona, Nico Leon, and Ian Herring. This comic follows on from the other 4 bind-ups of the comics after... This is after a very large crossover event that I can't remember the name of. Miss Marvel is now part of the Avengers. It adds more difficulties to her schooling. As always, Kamala Khan is still trying to juggle all the aspects of her life, her Muslim heritage, her schoolwork, and being a superhero and being a teenager. This to me reminds me of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, any of the stories about teenage girls having to juggle schoolwork and being superheroes, really. When I read Miss Marvel, it never feels like she's battling world-threatening villains, but there is always a comedy to the piece with some added pathos at times. This is quite a few months on from the last book that I read featuring these characters, and I still like the characters and the comedy aspect of it, but I'm just struggling to... But I think the biggest problem with this character is that at the end of this bind-up of them, Kamala ends up somehow becoming the bad guy herself, even though it's through good intentions, and whilst she tries to save her city, ends up having to call in the Avengers anyway, and the one that comes to save her is Iron Man, and I can't help but feel like it was the big knight in shining armour coming to save her. And so I want the character to go on and to fight villains and to be able to grow, and at the moment the character seems very stuck in the place of this character, this girl who cannot achieve anything better than what she already has, and I don't think that that's a message that should be sent out. Like, yes, you'll be body positive, you're talking about Islam in a comic book, but I think there needs to be more thought to making her a hero that can stand up on her own, rather than just going out of your way to say that she can't. Next we have Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb, the 3rd book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. I read this book as part of the Hobbalong run by Sam over at Sam's Nonsense. I still need to review this book and the 2nd book, The Mad Ship. This book follows on immediately from where The Mad Ship ended. All of the characters are now in some sort of peril. It is a very brilliant book. I can't talk about it because, as I said, it directly follows The Mad Ship and I don't want to spoil it, but it is a brilliant ending to the series. Some things happen to characters that I didn't expect. I ended up hating characters I'd previously loved, loving characters that I'd previously hated. It was one of those books, and it is a tremendous feat on Robin Hobb's part to keep me interested throughout a 903-page book. This book talked more about the politics of Bingtown, and I have to say it's not my favourite book in the series. If anything, I feel like this book could have been split into 2 books so that there could have been a focus on one aspect that I think was really just a load of conversations, and then it disappeared for about 300 pages, and then at the end it came back and everyone was saying, oh well, the matter's resolved now. And I just wished there'd been more focus on all the different threads in this one. In the first 2 books, I felt like Hobb dealt with all the threads perfectly and brought them together and separated them, and some of them were frayed, and it was a great book to read for that. But I feel like in Ship of Destiny, Hobb kind of lost track of some of the threads, and I think that if she had separated this book into 2 books, then she could have focused more on some of the aspects that I think needed looking at, that had made the first 2 books so interesting and different for me to read. So there's 4 books that I read this month. If you've read any of these books, please do tell me your opinions down below so that we can discuss them, or you can just tell me what you've read this month and I will take your recommendations or not. If you hated a book, please tell me you hated a book so that I can avoid it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.